Hello and welcome back to Turf Talk. I'm James Scully, joined by Vance Hanson, Travers Day Recap Edition. And Vance, we'll start with the Travers itself. I was up there, West Coast, came out on the track. I thought bouncing looked phenomenal in the post parade and then ran to it in the race. Really thought Mike Smith, seized the initiative, essentially schooled any jockeys. I thought at the very least, there was a chance for a contested pace up front in that race, even if it wasn't very fast, but that didn't materialize at all. West Coast proved easily best in the end, and like I said, it was just a terrific ride from Smith.
Yeah, it was almost like a repeat of last year, except the margin was a lot smaller and there was no track record involved here. But yeah, West Coast went out there, took the initiative, almost looked a little bit in trouble to me around the far turn, but then he rebroke in the stretch and just exuded superiority over perhaps one of the deepest fields we'll see all season in the 3-year-old class. And to me, he's firmly on top of the 3-year-old male division right now, having beaten almost every major contender based on the dirt in that particular race, and with a great gap between him and the rest of them.
Yeah, Vance wrote a piece on Monday at brisnet.com basically making that point, and I think there is something to be said about the fact that his main rivals, the horses that were running the Triple Crown, they've just been getting beat over and over and over again. And while West Coast doesn't have a commanding edge right now, he's got the most appealing profile, especially going forward, because with races like the Pennsylvania Derby, even like a race like the Clark in the fall, he could theoretically have a chance in that. And I think it's an interesting dynamic in the Breeders' Cup. I think of any 3-year-old male, he would have the best chance to, he had the chance to run the best in the Classic. But with Baffert having Arrogate and Collected, a race like the Dirt Mile could be an option. They could just cut him back to that. It hit him right between the eyes. He ran a huge race at a mile 16th in the Easy Goer going one turn, and that's a 2-turn mile. And I was wondering, what do you think about that potential?
If they're going to try older horses, or at least try and get a win, that'll enhance his Eclipse Award credentials. A race like the Jockey Club Gold Cup would seem to be a pretty good place to try that. It's a 1.25 miles, which is obviously right up his alley. He's already proven he loves Belmont Park. If he wins that particular race, they could still run him in the Classic, but it really wouldn't matter how well or poorly he happened to run in the Classic. It might just give him the edge going into the Breeders' Cup. I honestly don't see them cutting him back to a mile. I think 1.125 miles is just hits him right between the eyes. And like you said, after the Breeders' Cup, a race like the Clark might be a race they might look at also if they need to run him in something like that.
One way or another, I do think he has the potential to win at least another Grade 1, another big race this year, and I do think he has the best chance to be champion 3-year-old in the year. Let's turn our focus to the Personal Ensign, the first of the stakes on Saturday, and featured Songbird, who really had everything her own way, and you have to give a lot of credit to Unbridled Forever. She ran a great race. Rosario kept her out in the middle of the track, and she had to run down, loosen the lead rival. But it was a little bit interesting in the aftermath. I thought they asked Hollendorfer and Mike Smith, and Hollendorfer was a little bit more short answer, but Mike Smith was adamant that he didn't think she had lost anything. Just basically made the point that maybe she just couldn't keep getting better. But to me, she's not as good as she was last year. Last year, she just won these races under wraps, crushed the competition. I think she's taken a slight step back, and it's unfortunate because it sort of tarnishes the reputation she had, in my eyes, coming into 2017.
Yeah. What she was showing to us in the Ogden Phipps and the Delaware Handicap, not winning as impressively as she did last year, especially in the Delaware Handicap, which was a truly poor field as far as competition was concerned. She struggled to win that race over 1.25 miles. The Personal Ensign kind of confirmed to us, skeptics, so to speak, that she isn't quite as brilliant as she was last year. She has taken a step back. A little bit of one anyway, but the fact remains that she has won 2 major races this year. She narrowly lost this one in the Personal Ensign. She's come back to the field a little bit, and the Breeders' Cup Distaff is going to decide this champion older female race for sure. It'll have her Stellar Wind and Forever Unbridled, who I think might be under consideration for the Breeders' Cup Classic. That's something we might want to talk about here, but that particular race is going to decide everything. And Songbird is not going to be odds on in that particular race, obviously. Like I don't know if I can't remember if she was last year or not, but
she was.
She was
the favorite.
She was favorite in that race, and this race is much more wide open than some of her fans may have expected at the beginning of the year.
She can still go out on top with the victory if she trains up to the distaff. She could still regain some lost luster, you could say, and go out a winner. I just to me, her 2-year-old and 3-year-old campaigns are two of the best you'll ever see, by a 2-year-old filly and a 3-year-old filly, and like I said, I don't want to dismiss her going forward, but it was just really remarkable to me to see her get beat like that. Going to Forever Unbridled, what would you do? Would you consider the Classic?
Considering the field that's shaping up to run in that race, and they say that she'd have nothing to lose in there, well, you say that, but then what if Stellar Win wins the distaff by 5 lengths? You possibly forfeited an Eclipse Award by not running against.
Yeah.
So basically, Forever Unbridled hasn't faced everybody yet that she needs to face and beat to win the championship. I would go for the distaff. Yeah, second place in the Classic is worth however millions of dollars more than the winner's share of the distaff, but there's a lot to lose by skipping the distaff. I would go and run her in the distaff instead of the Classic.
Yeah, 100 speed rating too is it was visually really impressive, but that speed number wasn't that big. I mean, to me, pointer to the Beldame. Dallas Stewart said after that race she won it, real easy, real nice last year. That's an obvious target. Then they can make it. Then it'll be time to decide. So it's a little premature right now. But yeah, I agree with that. The distaff is where she would fit going forward right now in my eyes. And any other points for Saturday?
Just to note how impressive Drefong was.
No gate issues.
No gate issues. Had an easy late. He was kind of the lone speed in the race. Got away with some soft internal fractions, but the beast is back, and he's going to be really tough to beat again in the Breeders' Cup Sprint.
Yeah, Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint. Yeah, very, very much back on course to defend his title with that performance in the Forego. He was terrific. By the Moon, and Practical Joke. Both, I thought ran good races. I don't know how that will translate to Del Mar and going forward, but give them credit. And
I think Chad Brown's mentioned that he's possibly inclined to skip the Breeders' Cup with Practical Joke. It's a 2-turn mile.
Right.
I think he's
5 for 5 at 1 turn now.
Yes, and I think the Cigar Mile is going to be his primary goal for the fall, I assume. And I don't blame him for that. I think 1-turn miles are a lot different than 2-turn miles. So.
And one other point, Lady Eli, brilliant, I thought. I love the way she was striding out late. So she's on course with filly and mare turf, and should love that firm ground at Del Mar.
She should, and even if she were to get upset again in the Breeders' Cup, I think there's just so much emotion about her wanting to have a championship.
Right,
she's almost virtually, has solidified, I think, that this year based on the outpouring of fan support she has among both the racing fan base and the media.
All right, well, we hit all the big races from Saturday. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Turf Talk. We'll be back later with the On Point this week.